Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, there's clearly a great deal of public interest in this important issue, and it's good to see it commanding urgent attention from a diligent minister and a very busy and effective government. Like Mr. Chowdhury, I'd like to pay a tribute to my colleague Simon Bridges, the member for Tauranga, who I think deserves considerable kudos and credit for his hard work and for his attention to detail on this matter and for showing his responsiveness to that widespread public interest. I think it's a fitting reward that his measure has been adopted from the level of a private member's bill to a government bill, and I congratulate him for that. I know he's worked tirelessly to achieve that end. The provisions of this bill, absolutely indefatigable, Dr. Calder, thank you for that. The provisions of this bill have been well canvassed by previous speakers and in the earlier readings as this measure has moved through the House. I'm pleased that it is now a very comprehensive measure which underlines the seriousness of the issue, because several of my constituents in Hamilton West have raised their very real concerns about animal welfare issues with me in recent months, and this Animal Welfare Amendment Bill demonstrates that we are taking their concerns, indeed in many cases their deep revulsion and distress, very seriously. I imagine that all members of this House and the overwhelming number of New Zealanders struggle to understand how anyone could deliberately be cruel to a domestic pet and are sickened when instances of that type of abuse are brought to our attention. How anyone could feed kittens to a pit bull terrier is almost impossible to comprehend. How anyone could take pleasure from training dogs to fight is beyond me. And the disturbing reality is that such sickening cruelty to animals often reflects a propensity to inflict cruelty on the frail and vulnerable adults and children in our communities. So it is right that we enact stronger penalties to reflect society's collective revulsion towards those who inflict terror and pain on any living creatures. I'm encouraged to detect support for this bill from all the other parties in the House. But it was disappointing to hear Mr O'Connor wander from the topic when both Mr O'Connor and Mr Mackie expressed concern at the relatively low number of convictions for animal cruelty. I found myself in agreement with them. And for 9 long years under their government, very little did indeed happen in this area. But Mr O'Connor's suggestion that the new government is neglecting the people is bizarre, irrelevant and unfounded. And it was a shame that he showed little ability or inclination to focus on the provisions of this bill as he spoke. Animals barely got a look in when he was on his feet. In fact, it was a real 4 legs bad, 2 legs good type of address, and that was very disappointing. So let's look at what more informed commentators have said about this measure. And there aren't many more qualified to do so than the SPCA's National President, Bob Kerridge. Mr Kerridge said, "It is time to recognise that cruelty to animals is a social sickness that is as heinous as any act of violence inflicted on fellow humans, and the two are inextricably linked." He also said that willful ill treatment epitomises the most reprehensible acts of animal cruelty we encounter, for which sentences are generally abysmally light given the nature of the crimes. Well, sir, this bill addresses Mr Kerridge's concern and increases the maximum penalty for willful ill treatment of an animal to 5 years of imprisonment. The bill has also been warmly endorsed by Dr Wayne Ricketts of the New Zealand Veterinarians Association, who backs increasing the maximum penalty for willful ill treatment of animals and who has commended the government's comprehensive overhaul of animal welfare legislation and codes of welfare for commercial activities involving animals. Dr Ricketts said, "We are delighted to see an increased compliance and enforcement effort with the doubling of enforcement officers and the stated focus of bringing the key organisations involved in animal welfare together." So there is no doubt that there is considerable professional support for this bill. Those who have great experience of dealing with the issue out in our community are right behind it. It's wonderful to know that all members of the House are behind it, and I look forward to knowing that it will very shortly become the law of New Zealand.
Mr Speaker.
I call Stuart Nash.
Thank you.